Hey everyone, this is Six Path Weeb, and welcome to another deep dive discussion. Today's topic is Under Jiraiya's Wing, a Naruko AU. We'll be exploring what might have happened if Naruto's path had taken a different turn under Jiraiya's guidance, reimagined through the lens of Naruko. Disclaimer: the content on this channel is purely for entertainment and discussion. I do not own any of the anime footage featured in my videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's get started. The day after the fox attack. It was the day after the nine-tailed fox's attack. The entire village of Konoha was wrapped in sadness over the loss of their fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, and many brave shinobi who had given their all to protect the people. What few realized was that Minato had left behind a daughter named Naruko, who by fate had become the host of the Nine Tails. High above the rooftop sat Jiraiya, gazing silently at the village below. A cup of sake rested in his hand as he muttered softly, "Minato. You saved them all, but wasn't there another way?" He blamed himself for not being in the village that night. With a weary sigh, Jiraiya made his way to Minato's memorial stone, laying a white flower gently at its base. "I'm sorry, old friend," he whispered, before walking slowly toward the Hokage's office. In the Hokage's office. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, had once again taken the mantle of leadership. When Jiraiya entered, his eyes immediately fell on the small cradle beside the desk. Inside, baby Naruko slept peacefully, her whisker-like markings visible on her cheeks. "She looks like her father," Jiraiya murmured, his voice heavy with emotion. "Yes," Hiruzen replied softly. "She truly does." Jiraiya hesitated. "I'm her godfather, but I don't think I should take her with me. My life is too unpredictable." He paused. "What about Kakashi? He was closest to Minato." Hiruzen shook his head. "Kakashi has suffered great losses as well. He needs time." Jiraiya sat silently, the weight of everything pressing on his shoulders. With Kakashi. Meanwhile, Kakashi Hatake found himself at the memorial stone, staring at the carved names of those who had fallen. "Obito. Rin. Sensei," he whispered, standing frozen for hours. The memories were too heavy, and he didn't even have the strength to attend the funeral. Later, he wandered aimlessly into a quiet bar, where Jiraiya was already seated. Without a word, he sat beside him. "How do you cope with it?" Kakashi finally asked. Jiraiya looked into his glass. "When you figure that out, tell me," he replied quietly. 10 years later. A decade passed since the Nine Tails attack. It was Naruko Uzumaki's birthday. Though she smiled often, she secretly dreaded this day, as it reminded her of her loneliness. She had no family to celebrate with and often hid from the festivities in the village. Unbeknownst to her, a shy girl named Hinata Hyuga followed from afar, holding a small wrapped gift. Every year, Hinata left a present on Naruko's doorstep but never found the courage to give it directly. She admired Naruko's bright spirit and endless determination. Jiraiya returns. At the village gates, Jiraiya returned after many years away. October 10th. "Perhaps I chose the wrong day to come back," he muttered, just as his eyes caught sight of Naruko. She was cheerfully asking her classmate Sakura Haruno to join her for lunch, though Sakura declined in her usual fiery way. From the rooftops, Jiraiya also noticed Hinata trailing behind with her gift. "So, a Hyuga girl likes Naruko? Interesting." Naruko later rushed home, locking the shutters of her small apartment. Jiraiya frowned at the sight of the building. It was worn down, and unkind words had been scribbled on the walls. Still, when Hinata shyly left her gift at the door and ran off, Naruko's face lit up with pure joy. She opened it to find a small frog-shaped wallet, hugging it as if it were the most precious treasure in the world. Trouble at the festival. As the village festival began, Jiraiya followed Naruko quietly. When he sensed she was in trouble, he hurried and found Naruko being cornered by two older shinobi, with Hinata trying her best to shield her. Jiraiya stepped in immediately, his presence alone enough to make the aggressors back away. "Thank you for protecting her," he told Hinata gently as he helped Naruko up. Naruko smiled weakly, grateful for her friend's bravery. The two girls leaned on each other as Jiraiya guided them away from the noise of the festival. For the first time in years, Naruko felt a little less alone. In the Hokage's office. Later that evening, Kakashi appeared before Hiruzen, reporting the disturbance at the festival. The Hokage sighed, concerned for Naruko's well-being. At last, Hiruzen opened a drawer and handed Kakashi a document. It was Naruko's birth certificate. Kakashi froze. She's Sensei's daughter? Yes, Hiruzen confirmed. But it was not the right time to tell you. You were in too much pain back then. Kakashi's fists clenched, but he nodded. Understood. I'll protect her. Even from the shadows, if I must. Hiruzen looked out the window, the village lights twinkling against the night sky. That's all I ask. At Jiraiya's place. Jiraiya sat beside the bed where he had carefully laid Naruko down, waiting patiently for her to awaken. Soon, Naruko's bright blue eyes fluttered open, and she realized she was in a cozy room. Well, look who finally woke up, Jiraiya said with a cheerful grin. Who are you? Naruko asked curiously. Me? I'm the Toad Sage, Jiraiya. He replied with a proud smile. Now, let me ask you something. Do you have any dreams? Naruko jumped up with energy. I want to become Hokage, she announced with determination. Jiraiya's smile softened. And why do you want to become Hokage? He asked, wanting to understand her true motivation. I want to protect the village, just like the fourth Hokage did, Naruko said confidently, then her expression dimmed a little. And if I become Hokage, then everyone will look up to me instead of ignoring me. Jiraiya gave a half smile, both proud and thoughtful. I see. Very well, Naruko. How about I train you myself? Naruko blinked in surprise. But I'm already in the academy learning to be a shinobi. That's true, Jiraiya chuckled, but I can teach you things they never could. Besides, I was the one who trained the fourth Hokage. Since you want to follow in his footsteps, it only makes sense. Her eyes widened in amazement. You trained the fourth? That's incredible. She paused, then tilted her head. But what about being part of the village? Jiraiya thought for a moment. It puzzled him why Naruko wanted to dedicate herself to a place that often misunderstood her. Still, if this was her dream, he would help her achieve it. Don't worry about that. I'll speak with the Hokage eventually. But for now, we'll leave the village for a few years while I train you. I'll even show you some of the fourth's original techniques. Naruko considered the offer. Her life hadn't been easy so far, but this could be the chance to truly grow stronger. She also remembered hearing about the mysterious Toad Sage during class. Finally, she nodded. All right, I'll do it. When do we leave? Tomorrow, Jiraiya replied. But you can't tell anyone yet. Not even the Hokage. When they notice you're gone, they'll probably think you ran off on your own. So, I can't tell Iruka-sensei? Naruko asked softly. Jiraiya shook his head. I'm afraid not. Iruka would tell the Hokage right away. Is he the only one you wanted to tell? Yeah. Him and maybe the folks at Ichiraku. Other than that, not really anyone. Naruko lowered her gaze sadly. That's not true, Jiraiya said kindly. There's one person who would definitely miss you. A very nice girl who already cares about you. He remembered Hinata, who had once even stood up for Naruko despite her shyness. You mean Sakura-chan? Naruko asked hopefully. Jiraiya shook his head. No, not her. Honestly, Sakura doesn't treat you very kindly. I'm talking about someone else. The one who gave you that gift not too long ago. Naruko glanced at her little toad-shaped wallet. Then it clicked. Hinata? She's never been mean to me, but she never really talks to me either. I thought she didn't like me. Jiraiya chuckled. That's called being extremely shy. Try talking to her tomorrow and see what happens. I'm not saying you should start anything serious, but just talk to her. He smiled and added, you can tell Hinata that you'll be leaving the village for a while. Watch her reaction, you might be surprised. Naruko, only 10 years old, didn't fully understand what Jiraiya was hinting at, but she decided to trust his advice. Now get some rest, Jiraiya said, standing. I have a few things to prepare for tomorrow. With that, he vanished in a swirl of motion, leaving Naruko to settle into the comfortable bed. Soon, she drifted off to sleep. The next day at the academy. During lunchtime, Naruko nervously approached Hinata. She remembered how Hinata had tried to help her the night before. Hi, Hinata, Naruko said shyly. Thanks for trying to help me out yesterday. Hinata turned bright red and looked down, too flustered to speak. Naruko sat beside her and whispered, I'm going to be leaving the village soon. She noticed Hinata's eyes widen in worry. It'll only be for 2 or 3 years. I'll be back in time to graduate, though. I'll be training with the Toad Sage, Jiraiya. She grinned brightly. Hinata hesitated, then asked softly, so, you'll come back? Of course, Naruko nodded. Then, almost without thinking, she added, "When I return, would you like to grab some ramen with me?" Hinata's blush deepened. "Why yes. I'd love to, Naruko-chan." "But you have to promise not to tell anyone I'm leaving," Naruko said. Hinata quickly agreed, and the two went back to class. The rest of the day passed quickly. Everyone noticed how Naruko didn't bother Sakura at all, which was unusual. Later, Naruko returned to her apartment, only to find her belongings already packed with a note waiting for her. "Hey, Naruko. I've gathered your things. Meet me at my place." Smiling, Naruko headed out and soon reunited with Jiraiya. "You were right," she said thoughtfully. "Hinata really does care." Jiraiya laughed warmly. "Don't feel bad for not noticing sooner. You'll understand more as you grow up." With that, he formed hand seals, and in an instant, they both disappeared from the village. At Mount Myaboku, Naruko and Jiraiya reappeared in a mystical land surrounded by giant toads. An elderly toad, Fukasaku, greeted them kindly. "Welcome, Jiraiya and your young student, to Mount Myaboku, home of the Toad clan." Naruko gasped. "What? A talking toad?" Jiraiya chuckled. "Yep. This is where we'll live and train for the next few years." Gamakichi, a lively young toad, hopped over curiously. "Who's this?" "This is Naruko Uzumaki," Fukasaku explained. "She is Jiraiya's new student, and she may even become the next holder of the Toad contract." Satisfied, Gamakichi hopped off happily. "Why don't you look around, Naruko?" Jiraiya suggested. "Fukasaku and I need to discuss a few things." Naruko nodded excitedly and ran off to explore the amazing landscape. As she left, Jiraiya turned serious. "I'll teach her everything I can, Fukasaku." "I understand," the elder toad replied. "But be careful. She is still young. Train her well, but don't push her into anything too dangerous." Soon, Naruko returned with a wide smile. "This place is amazing. So, when can we start training?" "Not today," Jiraiya laughed. "We'll begin tomorrow morning. For now, I'll show you to your room. After that, you can spend some time with Gamakichi while I prepare your training schedule." Naruko nodded eagerly, her heart full of excitement for the adventure ahead. 2 days later at the Ninja Academy, Iruka was carefully observing his students as they entered the classroom. One particular absence immediately stood out to him. "Naruko isn't here again. Something doesn't feel right," he thought with concern. Turning toward Mizuki, Iruka spoke, "Mizuki, please cover the class for me. I need to check on something important." Mizuki gave a quick nod of acknowledgement. Without hesitation, Iruka left the academy and headed toward Naruko's small apartment. Upon arrival, he knocked on the door several times but received no response. When he gently turned the handle, he realized the door was unlocked. "That's unusual," he thought, stepping inside carefully. To his surprise, the apartment looked unusually empty. All of Naruko's belongings and clothing were gone, leaving behind only the bare furniture. "This isn't good. I must report this to the Hokage immediately," Iruka said anxiously. He swiftly dashed across rooftops until he reached the Hokage tower. Without delay, he entered through the nearest window. "Hokage-sama. Naruko is missing," Iruka exclaimed with urgency. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, raised his hand calmly. "Slow down, Iruka. What makes you think she is missing?" "I went to her apartment. All of her personal belongings are gone, only the furniture remains," Iruka explained with genuine worry. Hiruzen's expression grew serious. "Iruka, summon the council. You have 5 minutes." Iruka bowed and hurried away to complete the task. Meanwhile, Hiruzen summoned one of his trusted Anbu operatives. "Dog, search the village thoroughly for any trace of Naruko." Dog appeared, bowed, and quickly departed to follow the order. Soon after, the council chamber was filled with the heads of clans and officials. Iruka explained the situation, confirming Naruko's disappearance. Moments later, Dog returned with his tracking summon, Pakun. "Report," Hiruzen commanded. "I checked Naruko's apartment as Iruka described. All personal effects are gone. Pakun traced her scent, but it disappears at the edge of the village. It seems she has already left," Dog reported. The council began to murmur amongst themselves. A civilian member stood up and exclaimed, "We should send out tracking units immediately." Others nodded in agreement, including Danzo, Homura, and Koharu. Hiruzen raised his hand. "The Inuzuka clan will handle the search. Naruko is important to this village." Sume Inuzuka stood proudly. Of course, Hokage-sama. We will begin at once. She left to organize her trackers. Hiyashi, Hiruzen continued, please have your clan perform a sweep of the village just to be certain. As you wish, Hiyashi replied, bowing respectfully before leaving. With no further matters raised, Hiruzen concluded the meeting. As the council members dispersed, 3 clan heads lingered behind, Shikaku Nara, Inoiki Yamanaka, and Choza Akimichi. Shikaku spoke in a low, thoughtful tone. Honestly, I hope Naruko is safe wherever she is. She's faced enough hardship from those who misunderstand her. Inoiki nodded. Exactly. That past event affected many, but it's not fair to place that burden on her. Choza sighed in agreement. Hiruzen, who was still present, rose slowly from his seat. Fear, sorrow, and frustration can cloud people's hearts, leading them to act unfairly. But Naruko deserves far better than that. His words carried a heavy tone as he left the chamber deep in thought. At the academy. Later, Iruka returned to his classroom to announce Naruko's absence. Some students were shocked, while others, like Sasuke and his admirers, remained indifferent. Iruka's eyes landed on Hinata, who looked especially downcast. She had secretly known Naruko would be leaving for training, but now that Naruko was truly gone, Hinata felt her days growing lonelier. She treasured the recent memory of Naruko speaking kindly to her, though it only deepened the sadness of her absence. At Mount Myaboku. Far away, Naruko had already been training with Jiraiya for a week. At the moment, she was practicing the clone technique, but her attempts weren't quite working out. The clones appeared distorted and unstable. Jiraiya, watching closely, scratched his head. She's doing everything correctly, but the result is still off. The elder toad, Fukasaku, spoke wisely, perhaps a technique requiring greater chakra would suit her better. Some talents shine brighter when tested with stronger methods. Jiraiya considered this and soon pulled out a scroll. Shadow clones. Yes, this might be the perfect direction. Oi, Naruko. Come here. Jiraiya called. Naruko perked up immediately. A new jutsu? That sounds awesome, she exclaimed, her bright energy lighting up the training grounds. Jiraiya explained the shadow clone technique carefully, emphasizing that unlike normal clones, these would be solid and capable of fighting or using ninjutsu. Naruko eagerly threw herself into training, her determination shining. Hours passed, and finally, she came running back with an enormous grin. I did it. I really did it, she shouted happily. Let's see, Jiraiya encouraged. Naruko performed the hand seals. Shadow clone jutsu. With a puff of smoke, a perfect clone appeared beside her. Jiraiya nodded with satisfaction. Very good. Now, how many can you create at once? Naruko's smile widened mischievously. Let's find out. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. In a massive cloud of smoke, the field filled with hundreds upon hundreds of Naruko clones, all smiling proudly back at her teachers. Fukasaku's jaw nearly dropped. Astounding. I've never seen so many at once. Jiraiya chuckled. She really is something special. Almost 3 years later. On a quiet day at Mount Myaboku, Jiraiya and Naruko sat on a log sharing a meal with Fukasaku and Gamakichi. Well, Naruko, you've grown tremendously. You've learned everything I promised to teach you, Jiraiya said warmly. Naruko beamed. I can't wait to show everyone back home how strong I've become. Jiraiya chuckled. Not so fast. You can reveal some of your skills, but keep the Rasengan hidden for now. That's our little secret until the right time. Naruko pouted playfully but nodded. Fine. But only because you said so. Jiraiya smiled. Good. The academy exams are coming soon, so we'll return within the week. Naruko's heart raced with excitement at the thought of finally returning home. Back in the village. Hinata sighed as she walked through the Hyuga compound. Nearly 3 years had passed since Naruko left, and she often wondered when she would return. Kiba greeted her with his usual cheer. Hey, Hinata. Want to go out sometime? Hinata smiled kindly. I'm sorry, Kiba. I like you very much as a friend, but nothing more. Kiba chuckled, scratching his head. Yeah, I figured. But it never hurts to ask. As Hinata walked deeper into the compound, her mood dimmed. Many in her clan misunderstood her gentle kindness, calling it a weakness. Her father had long shifted his attention toward training her younger sister, Hanabi, leaving Hinata feeling overlooked. Still, in her heart, the thought of Naruko's return gave her the strength to keep moving forward. In Myobakuzen, Naruko sat quietly in her room, deep in thought about the Nine Tails. Jiraiya had told her a year ago why so many villagers looked at her differently, but she still hadn't truly spoken to the mighty fox sealed inside her. I wonder how I could actually talk to the Nine Tails? Naruko thought. Before she could think further, the world around her faded and she suddenly found herself inside her mind. She stood before a gigantic gate. "Welcome to my dwelling," boomed the voice of the enormous fox. "So, you're the one everyone fears so much?" Naruko asked curiously. The fox chuckled. "Indeed. Why is it that you wish to speak with me?" "Well, since you're sealed inside me, I figured we might as well talk," Naruko replied, sitting cross-legged in front of the gate. Naruko had always heard that the Nine Tails was terrifying, but speaking with it didn't feel as frightening as she expected. The fox lowered itself so its eyes were closer to her level. "You truly just wish to know me? Even though I caused you hardship, you still wish to talk?" "Of course. Is that strange?" Naruko tilted her head. The fox gave a rumbling laugh. "You are certainly unusual. Most people only fear me. And yet you, even after everything, still dream of protecting your village and becoming Hokage. That is different." For the first time in many years, the fox felt intrigued. Naruko looked around. "By the way, why does this place look like a gloomy sewer?" "How should I know? This is your mind, not mine," the fox replied with amusement. "Now go. I need to think." With that, Naruko was gently pushed out of the mindscape and returned to reality. In the Hokage Tower. The third Hokage, Hiruzen, reviewed the academy records for the upcoming exams. He had nearly completed the team formations, but one group was still incomplete. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I'll finalize this during the exams," he muttered. As he set the files aside, his eyes drifted to the photo of Naruko he kept in his desk. "Things always felt brighter when you were here, Naruko," he thought with a gentle sigh. At the memorial stone. Kakashi stood silently before the memorial stone, lost in his thoughts. It had been a year since he stepped down as leader of the Anbu, and he still reflected often on the past. He remembered when he discovered Naruko was the daughter of his teacher, the fourth Hokage. He had planned to spend more time with her, but she had suddenly left with Jiraiya. "Sorry, sensei," Kakashi whispered. "I should have been there for her." With that, he vanished in a flash to report to Hiruzen for his next mission. In the Hokage's office. "You're late, Kakashi," Hiruzen said calmly. "My apologies," Kakashi replied. "So, what's this special assignment?" The Hokage handed him a file. "You will be leading Team 7. Kakashi sighed but accepted the decision. "Understood." Back in Myobakuzen. "Hey, pervy sage," Naruko said with a grin, "what if we give the old man a little surprise when we return?" Jiraiya raised an eyebrow. "Oh? What do you have in mind?" Naruko explained her idea, transforming with fox ears and tails to give the Hokage a playful scare. Jiraiya burst into laughter. "That's brilliant. We'll practice it for the next few days." Even the Nine Tails chuckled inside Naruko's mind, amused at her mischievous idea. Later, in the village. Hinata sat in her room, restless. Naruko had promised to be back before the exams, but she hadn't seen her yet. Gathering her courage, Hinata decided to visit the Hokage directly. Meanwhile, Hiruzen was still buried in paperwork when a puff of smoke filled his office. When it cleared, Jiraiya stood beside Naruko, who now had fox ears and tail swishing playfully. The Hokage's eyes went wide, and he fainted on the spot. Jiraiya roared with laughter. Naruko quickly released the transformation and knelt beside Hiruzen. "See? He's just fainted," she exclaimed with relief. When the Hokage finally awoke, he looked at Naruko with a mixture of surprise and relief. "So, you were with Jiraiya this whole time?" "That's right," Jiraiya answered. "She was safer with me than here." Before more could be said, the office door creaked open and Hinata stepped inside. Naruko's face lit up. Without thinking, she rushed forward and hugged her friend. Hinata's cheeks turned bright red and she fainted from surprise. Jiraiya chuckled. "Naruko, you're already winning hearts without even trying." Naruko tilted her head in confusion. "Eh? Why did Hinata-chan faint?" The room filled with warm laughter. For the first time in a long while, the Hokage felt lighter at heart. Flashback. Naruko had just finished switching the contents of one of Gamabunta's sake drums with salt water. She laughed quietly as she sat a safe distance away on a hill, waiting for Gamabunta to reach for his drink. She didn't have to wait long, as the great toad boss always had some sake around this time of day. Naruko began to count down playfully, 5, 4, 3, 2. But before she could reach 1, she heard Gamabunta's booming voice. "What is this? Salt water? Naruko?" The great toad bellowed. Naruko decided it would be wise to keep out of sight for the next few days. Jiraiya, who had been observing, couldn't help but laugh at the scene. End of flashback. Jiraiya shuddered slightly as he remembered how upset the toad boss had been afterward. "So you took her to Mount Myaboku. I see. That means she can probably summon toads now as well?" Hiruzen asked thoughtfully. Jiraiya nodded. "Anyhow, about Naruko taking the exams tomorrow?" Jiraiya continued. "If she's been training with you for almost 3 years, I don't see why not. Though the council will no doubt give me some headaches over the matter," Hiruzen said, sounding slightly weary. "Wouldn't be the first time, old man," Jiraiya replied with a grin. With Naruko. Naruko sat patiently outside the Hokage's office on a bench, holding an unconscious Hinata gently. She looked down at her friend, who seemed so peaceful. "I wonder if she really does like me as more than a friend," Naruko thought aloud. "You silly girl, of course she likes you as more than a friend. She's been admiring you for years," the fox inside her said with a huff. "How would you know?" Naruko asked the fox curiously. "Because I can hear and see what you do, sometimes even more than you. You can be so dense," the fox muttered. "Don't call me dense, you grumpy fox." Naruko pouted. "Then stop acting like it," the fox replied before settling down to sleep again. Naruko mumbled, "Annoying fox," before her attention shifted back as Hinata stirred awake. "Hey, Hinata." Naruko greeted with a big, cheerful smile. Hinata sat up quickly, flustered and nervous. "So, Hinata, still want to get something to eat sometime?" Naruko asked brightly. Hinata's cheeks turned pink. Sure, Naruko-chan," she stammered softly. What the two didn't know was that Jiraiya and the third Hokage had been watching. Hiruzen cleared his throat to make his presence known. "Glad to see you have a close friend, Naruko," Hiruzen said warmly, "but I think it would be wise for you two to keep your bond quiet for now, especially from her clan." Both girls blushed at his words. Naruko somewhat understood, but Hinata was more confused, though secretly, the idea of having a special secret with Naruko felt thrilling. "Well, Naruko, you're all set to take the Jinan exam tomorrow," Jiraiya reminded her. Naruko's excitement bubbled over. She jumped into the air joyfully, making Hinata smile at her enthusiasm. "Now, Hinata, it's best you head home. It's late," Hiruzen advised kindly. "I'll walk her home," Naruko offered eagerly. Hinata blushed. "Naruko is going to walk me home?" she thought happily. "By the way, Naruko, your apartment has been looked after, so it's ready for you whenever you want to return," Hiruzen added. "All right. Thanks, old man," Naruko said cheerfully before leaving with Hinata. "Tomorrow is going to be quite interesting, don't you think?" Jiraiya commented. "Yes. I believe it will," Hiruzen replied with a thoughtful expression. "Why exactly do you want them to keep their friendship quiet?" Jiraiya asked curiously. "Hinata's clan does not approve of Naruko. Her father, Hyashi, may not show it openly, but I've seen the subtle signs. I don't worry about Naruko, she can take care of herself, but Hinata might face pressure from her family if they knew," Hiruzen said with a sigh. With Naruko and Hinata. The two girls walked down the quiet streets of the village. It was late, so very few people were around. Naruko happily shared stories about her time at Mount Myaboku. Hinata giggled when Naruko described her prank on Gamabunta with the salt water. "Oh, and then me and Gamakichi hid all his sake. He was so annoyed with us," Naruko added with a grin. Hinata laughed softly, enjoying every bit of Naruko's mischievous stories. Soon, the Hyuga compound came into view. "Thanks for walking me home, Naruko-chan," Hinata said sweetly. She quickly kissed Naruko on the cheek and hurried to her house before Naruko could respond. Naruko stood still for a moment, blushing and touching her cheek with a smile. She then turned and made her way back to her apartment, her thoughts filled with Hinata. When she arrived, she gasped. "Wow! The old man had the place cleaned up for me," she exclaimed. The graffiti was gone, and though the inside was a little dusty, it felt fresh and welcoming. Naruko used her old key to open the door, finding everything neat and tidy. She noticed her small garden in the back had withered, but she shrugged it off. Guess it was too much to expect it to still be alive after so long, she thought. She unpacked her belongings and put things in order. Naruko felt glad to be home again, even if it meant facing the villagers' stares. At least now she was a ninja, and she had Hinata, whether as a girlfriend or a very close friend. Guys, that's a wrap for this part. The journey doesn't stop here, there's more on the way. Much love. 6th Path Weeb.